So President Cyril Ramaphosa is facing growing scrutiny about the direction of his sixth administration. Do investors still believe in the new dawn, as Ramaphosa promised before ascending to high office? And how does the COVID-19 pandemic and the recent wave of civil unrest affect investment in South Africa? For more on this, of course, Xolani Mbanja will be joined by Future Growth Asset Management CIO Andrew Cantor. Xolani.
Thank you very much, Bongi. Well, thank you once again, Andrew Cantor, the Chief Investment Officer at Future Growth Asset Management, for joining us tonight. Andrew, President Cyril Ramaphosa is under a lot of that scrutiny right now. There are expectations of a cabinet reshuffle. What are your feelings as an asset manager and an investor in the direction that the Ramaphosa administration is headed? We know that we've had unrest and COVID-19 pandemic that has stalled what could have been any semblance of economic growth in the past couple of months.
I think we have to look at South Africa from a historical lens, and things are either always terrible or they're great, and you get sucked into it. And it's easy to be depressed now with the global environment, with the pandemic, with global inequality, with political actors getting inside our heads through our cell phones and et cetera, manipulating people to do crazy things. And you don't want to get sucked into that. I mean, where we were at the end of the Zuma administration after the 10 lost years was in a very bad place. And while I think we could all agree that we were a bit impatient for more fast and decisive action, the direction of travel is right. Whether you look through the SOEs, and Eskom has proper leadership now in a proper direction, I'm not saying it's cured, but the direction of travel is correct. Letting SIA go finally, Mango, land banks being restructured, and we're a big lender to land bank. We're not really happy about the way it's evolved and the way it's happened, and there's going to be consequences. But the fact of the matter is it's being done, that the company's going to be restructured for its next 50 or 100 years from its last 100 years. New head of SARS, a new wind blowing through SARS, National Prosecuting Authority, the judiciary standing up as an independent body, playing its proper role in society, press freedoms. I was looking at a chart today, I think it was on Bloomberg, showing what are the unsafest places in the world to be a journalist, where you like to get killed if you're a journalist. South Africa ain't on that list. We have freedom of the press here, which is a powerful thing. So, look, I'm not denying the underlying factors of poverty, inequality, economic despair, and a really bad fiscal situation. But there are the movements are positive. The direction of travel in the Ramaphosa administration is a positive direction of travel.
You 5 years ago, as Future Growth, you as a big player in the funding of SOEs, as you've said, in also the land bank, you took a decision no longer to fund state entities until you've done a complete review. What's that current status right now? Recently, we saw that National Treasury had taken some decision to say that they were going to only provide guarantees in certain instances. How is that sitting with you as investors?
Okay, so there's a couple of questions there. The one is the governance review, and remember, historically, they were state entities. Who asks questions about state entities? It's the government's job to run them and manage them and govern them. And then we kind of realized through the corruption and malfeasance that we all kind of smelled but couldn't quite prove by 2016 that something was going amiss. And there came a point as an investor where we felt it became incumbent upon us, before allocating more capital, to demand to do a review of governance, much like we do for a private sector company. That's essentially what we said. Made quite a lot of noise at the time, and we've done those governance reviews subsequently. And to be honest, nobody had done them in the past. The ratings agents, the private sector, us, didn't really pay much attention to SOE governance. We kind of took it as departments of state. So that's one thing. And I think, again, the direction of travel is right. That land bank didn't fail because of fraud or malfeasance or corruption. It failed because of just plain old bad risk management, which is also a governance issue, by the way. But as I say, the direction of travel in most SOEs is the right direction of travel. I think the intent from the top is to improve, well, it is to improve the situation all around in the SOEs. As for the guarantees, I think that's a really interesting discussion. The presumption that many have that, well, they're state-owned entities, the government must bail them out, is simply not true. These are not guaranteed bonds. You'll earn a commercial yield on bonds that aren't guaranteed. Some are. Eskom's bonds are mostly guaranteed, for example. But, you know, AXA, Denel, None of SAA did have some guarantees, and that's why government had to keep supporting it. Land Bank didn't have government guarantees, and the private sector took risk and got a commercial return, and is probably going to take a lump or two from that. So I don't expect the National Treasury to bail out every SOE that gets into trouble, every state-related entity gets into trouble. That's what we get. We're supposed to do credit analysis. We're supposed to exercise judgment. We're supposed to do analysis and deploy capital at an appropriate risk-adjusted return and take the risks. And every now and then, if you make loans go bust. So it goes.
So as far as what I'm hearing you saying, Andrew, you still have some trust that we are going in the right direction as South Africa, particularly the new dawn, as it were, that President Cyril Ramaphosa promised the country before his ascendance to high office.
So let's just say that the new dawn, the world is spinning slowly, so the sun isn't rising at the dawn as much as it's like. But again, I mean, also the new dawn ran smack into a COVID debacle. South Africa is already in a really bad state that this administration inherited. And now you go smack into COVID, where you shut down the economy. You have a deficit to GDP of 14%, negative economic growth of 7+%, negative 7%. I mean, it's just enormous stuff. And that's on top of the bonfire we already had. It really makes it difficult to turn the corner. So yeah, it's going to drag on. I mean, the debt to GDP ratio is a problem. We're deep into the 80% range, which really makes us a double B credit and going in the wrong direction. And we're going to be running deficits for a few more years. That really impairs the flexibility of this government and this country to build what needs to be built, to bring interest rates down to levels that become competitive in the world, and to deploy capital.
Andrew, as we are speaking right now, there's news just in, breaking news, that at 8:30 tonight, President Cyril Ramaphosa is going to be announcing a new executive of ministers. There's going to be a cabinet reshuffle. Let me ask you, as our first person to respond on this, what do you hope to see? I know you're just an investor, but not just a small investor. You have almost 190 billion rand in assets under management. Now that this reshuffle is happening, what would you like to see? What would you not like to see?
What we've always wanted to see since the end of the Zuma administration is retribution, anger, lashing out, get rid of the bad guys. And we know who they are, and it's been slow in coming, and we'd like to see it again tonight. We'd like to see a major addressing of what happened in the security cluster. The signs were there, the warnings were there, and nothing happened. We talked about the restoration of peace. It wasn't restored. It just kind of the riots burned themselves out, from what I can tell. I'm not impressed by that, and we'd all like to see retribution for that. Am I going to name names? Do I know specifically? I don't know. There's all sorts of rumors. But direction of travel, I would be delighted to see, as he said at the beginning of his administration, fewer ministries, fewer employees, fewer cost base, more concentrated authority, better people with proven abilities and proven integrity. That's what I'd like to see. And I think that's what we'd all like to see. And as usual, in a political environment that is as fraught as we and the world have, let's not be deluded, whether it's in the UK or the US or anywhere else in the world, things are tight and aggressive on both sides. There's going to be compromises, and we won't be happy with everything that's said.
Andrew, a lot of people are putting a lot of hope in this cabinet reshuffle. Is it just a normal cabinet reshuffle, do you think, or there has to be more to this? There is a sign that has to be sent publicly and internationally that something is being done. We've seen so many cabinet reshuffles with the previous administration. This is the first one. So to you as an investor, do you see any message coming through with this particular cabinet reshuffle tonight?
There's always messages, but they're usually quite obscure, and they're couched in you have to read it from the top down rather than the detail, because they don't throw people out on the ear and say you did a terrible job. Unfortunately, sometimes you wish they would, but they don't. So as I said, I mean, it's direction of travel. We're all about direction of travel. It's a long, slow road. The sun is rising for the new dawn. Direction of travel. You want to see the right direction of travel. You don't want to see backsliding to be appointed cronies or cadre deployment or any of that stuff. You want to see qualified people with proven abilities put into positions of authority to get stuff done.
Andrew, recently I saw Future Growth getting more into the tourism space. We know tourism is in a dead end right now because of the third wave, and also the recent unrest. The travel is not there. Obviously, you're seeing something different since you are actually putting your money in that direction. Why would you go there? When are you also seeing an upswing when it comes to that particular sector?
So it takes quite a long time to put such unlisted or private equity, even private debt deals to bed. You talk about those things for years, usually from corporate strategic realignments. And what you do when you hit a COVID is you revisit the deal terms. You lengthen you thought your cash flows were going to go up from year one, but actually stretched out for 3 years, and then your cash flows price adjusts, and that's how you get those deals over the line in this environment. We are not banging the table saying the tourism is going to turn the corner in the next 12 months. Or even 24. I mean, the waves of COVID that are going to keep coming are just going to keep things low and slow. You can hope for the new dawn for tourism as well, but I don't think we're sending any major message about the tourism industry in the short term by making recent investments.
Andrew, a recent discussion, a debate that's been going on for quite a while now, but it's actually come to a head recently, using pension funds to invest more in infrastructure. That's number one. And number two, allowing cash-strapped workers to access their pension funds to weather the COVID-19 financial storm. In your point of view, what are the pros and cons of this?
Okay, those are two very big subjects. Let's take them in turn. Let's take the using pension funds to fund infrastructure. Look, we've been doing that since 1995. It is doable. It's pragmatic. You can do analysis of deals. You can make them bankable. That is investable, usually from a debt point of view when you talk about infrastructure, because equity is usually something that's state-related or much smaller in infrastructure. And we've been doing it. And we've funded various kinds of not just infrastructure. And what is classic infrastructure? Transport, power, communications, and I'm missing the fourth one, telecommunications. And then there's all sorts of other things. There's low-income and affordable housing. There's healthcare. There's tourism that you mentioned a minute ago. We're big in the low-income and affordable housing sector, for example. We funded some hospitals, for example. So infrastructure is a very investable asset class. You don't have to tweak Reg 28 to actually make it investable for pension funds. They always were able. Maybe the only thing that was limiting them was caps, a presumption that listed is good. You must buy listed shares. You must buy listed bonds. When in fact listed actually doesn't add a lot of value for institutional investors. It doesn't give you any better protections or any more liquidity, particularly in the debt space. So the tweaks to Reg 20 is kind of a pointer saying to pension funds, please look more at infrastructure, but it's not prescriptive. It doesn't tell them to do it. So that's not a big change, and it doesn't worry me. I think pension funds are long-term savings plans for people with long-term pensions. It's entirely suitable to put it into long-term, roads, dams, power plants that are 30 and 50 and 100-year assets. Makes perfectly good sense to do that. And we've been doing it and earning very good returns for our clients literally since 1995. I'm not exaggerating. The second question about whether people should be able to access their pension funds for the short-term crisis, it's a tough one. First of all, globally, it is not done. The only time you let people access their pension funds early is basically sometimes in some countries for housing loans. If you're going to build a house, and rather than take a loan from the bank, you can access your own pension fund capital. Otherwise, it's generally not done because it's usually a bad idea. If people, all of us, and this is not a classist argument, all of us would struggle to keep our hands off the piggy bank if it was available to us. In a crisis, that money will disappear. And there's a reason why the state actually gives people a tax break, that is, reduces taxable income now if you save for pensions, is because they don't want you to be a burden on the state when you retire, when you come to retirement. And so for them to let that money flow back out the door and become taxable income in people's hands, and the money disappears, and given the social pressures, it's going to be very hard to control. That money will literally disappear. But that sounds enormously arrogant, and it hints at what's called a middle-class savings model. I expect to live to retirement, so yeah, I'm willing to save for retirement. But if you're living in an environment where you don't have food and your life isn't working and you may not live to retirement, then it doesn't do you a heck of a lot of good to have a retirement plan, and I fully understand that. So this is a thorny issue, but I must say, if it wasn't severely constrained, I think it'd be a big mistake. If you're going to do it at all, you do it in a small percentage of somebody's assets, not the whole kit and caboodle.
Lastly and briefly, Andrew, before I let you go, we saw the impact of the unrest, when it comes to the economy, particularly in the third quarter. There is fears now that there could be more such unrest that could be sparked in the coming months or years. What is likely to happen economically, particularly for decision makers such as yourself, as that worry is there?
Look, we all know that this thing was a huge blow to confidence of the country, and anybody even people who live here, would think twice about investing capital in new plants and equipment and factories or warehouses, given that uncertainty that's out there. If you're sitting in Europe or the U.S. and the world's your oyster, is South Africa on your radar now? I think not. If you look at the growth, and let's be frank, the whole answer to the South African situation is economic growth. The forecast now, 4% this year, 3% next year, 2% the year after. I mean, this is not going to get us where we need to go. We need growth, and in order, if you remember the halcyon days in the 1990s when things were zooming and booming, and we were getting up, or even the early 2000s when you were above 5% annual economic growth for a few years, that was capital investment coming. That was foreign people in addition to domestic people with confidence investing in the economy. So this blow to confidence is bad. A further blow would really be a problem. Right now, I can say, and I say it with belief, that what happened was roughly the same as the Capitol riot in the U.S. in January. The death throes of a dying administration, making a lot of noise, playing the political card, and instigating people to do some really incredibly bad things. But if it happens again and again, you start getting seriously worried about the rule of law, and sustainability and confidence really starts going backwards. We can survive this, and I think we will. I seriously hope that the central government is more jacked up and heads off such willful, instigated attacks on the economy. There's no doubt this was instigated. The people who own, and we own a property fund. We have a property fund that was set up in 1994 and has something like 30 properties in township and disadvantaged areas around the country. 5 of our properties were attacked, and it was all the messages from us, from our funds, from other funds, is it was a willful, intentional, specific attack. They weren't coming to loot. They came in and they kept chopping up the fire hoses and resetting fire to buildings that the fires had been put out. It was intentional and it was instigated. Now that's an insurrection. So the government has to respond to an insurrection. If they don't, there's a serious problem.
Andrew Kenta, thank you very much for your time there, the Chief Investment Officer at Future Growth Asset Managers, the company that is responsible for managing assets worth up to 190 billion rand, telling us that what he actually expects to see tonight, when it comes to the cabinet reshuffle at 8:30, but also his expectations about economic growth prospects in this country.